everybody, and welcome to the Insurance Leadership Podcast. I'm your host for today's episode, Casey Combest, and I'm here with my two other co-hosts, Ryan Eaton and Ben Markland. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Y'all doing okay today?
Great, man.
Good. As we wrap up this year, what major shifts have you guys seen in the insurance landscape, especially in how brokers and carriers are adapting to this market?
As always in the industry, costs continue to rise, and the agent's role really is kind of adapting to that, kind of helping the customers figure out solutions. And I think really to combat the rising costs, brokers are starting to embrace non-insurance products, wellness, telemedicine, mental health, financial wellness. We see people even jumping into cybersecurity. Some of these big companies, I'm sure you guys have seen in the news, you get hit with a cyber attack that could turn your world upside down pretty quickly. So, these are things that insurance agents, I don't even think was crossing their mind years ago. And now it's becoming another arrow in their quiver that they're having to talk to businesses about. So, that's one thing I think a lot of agents are really, in the last few years, probably were kicking and screaming a little bit more, but now if you're not adopting digital tools, you're gonna be left behind pretty quickly. So we're seeing some situations where they're partnering with tech companies. InsurTech is a term they're using now to kind of define these digital platforms, enrollment tools, quoting platforms. So we're seeing a lot of agents kind of start to embrace that. And I think just the bar has been raised quite a bit with employers as far as what their employees need and the role of an HR person. They want technology. They want things to be easy. We're living in a world where most of these people grew up buying things on Amazon, and we're trying to kind of compare that experience. So to me, that's something agents are really having to adapt to in a world where a lot of them, especially kind of the older generation, they did things on handshakes and pen and paper. And, some of these things, we're helping them here at Morgan White kind of move in to that more technology forward environment. So that's one of the things we're seeing that they're really having to do to kind of adapt to what they need.
I'd add to that too. I heard yesterday, I had a guy who was the compliance officer with the company, and he was moving their self-funded plan to another administrator. And I said, did that administrator mess up? They do anything wrong? Was their PBMs not correct? He said, no. He said, they did everything great on that front. He said, but the tools that I'm using with them to be able to pull claims data and analyze claims data is not efficient in today's environment. And he was moving to another one that he said they may not do quite as good a job on some things, but their technology, I can get all the information I need like that. Yeah. And he said, I'm not having to run reports and pull Excels and set up pivot tables and everything else to try to get the data I need. So I think, Ben, to your point, it is something that people are trying. It's as easy as you can make it for the consumer from a technology standpoint. It's huge in today's market.
Yeah, and no matter what you're buying, it's super competitive out there. And thankfully, we have choices. And
that's right.
See which one is the best and easiest for you.
That's right.
Yeah, and our industry has been pretty resistant to that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
If you look at, insurance carriers in general, these are monstrous ecosystems of data and information, yet a lot of it's so old. Yeah. And it's almost impossible to go into a situation like that and make a big change. There's going to be a ripple effect that kind of comes down, but they're really being pushed now by the...
And I would say that too, a lot of people don't realize changing technology, what all it takes. Because there's so many things that go into it. We saw it last week in something even with our own technology. A group was not paying by draft or ACH. They wanted to still pay by check. And so they were sending their check on the 15th of each month. Well, coverage starts on the 1st of the month. The file feeds are going across on the 1st of the month. So they're a month late on getting the correct file feeds, which messes up the bill, which messes up the other information. And if you don't have all those things synced and automated, and even if your employer, your individual is still wanting to do something the old school way, all the new technology, it may mess up the functions and systems and timing of everything. Right. And so it's really one of those things. Just as a society too, we got to realize that to be able for things to work like we want them to work, we have to adapt the new technology.
That's right. And guys, we are on the cusp of Q4. We're in Q4 even. And I know for you guys, I feel like y'all walk about 20% faster when I see you in Q4. You guys are busy.
Two more cups of coffee.
Two more cups of coffee. I know this is just such an intense time for you guys. As you're looking at this year compared to last year, what changes are you guys seeing, maybe with who you're working with or what you guys are doing internally, especially how it relates to supplemental and gap products?
Well, I would say I was talking to a Blue Cross Blue Shield rep the other day, and I think a lot of carriers are seeing heavy rate increases across the country right now. You get Blue Cross, United, the big boys out there. We're seeing a lot of rate increases, and I asked him, I said, from your side, why do you think these rate increases are happening? He said, well, obviously in price inflation, right? Medical inflation's kicked in, you got some of that. Everything's gone up 30 to 40% since COVID, new negotiated contracts with providers, all that type stuff, which you would think. But he said also the difference, he said, think about it 20 years ago. He said, how often did you go to the doctor? He said, now think about it. People go to the doctor for everything. So it's a lot of utilization out there, even the small things, and not saying anything bad about the medical providers, but a lot of them to cover themselves. Oh, well, we might need to get a CT scan or an MRI or something like this. And what does that do? It just drives up the cost of care because it's continued to ping that medical plan. And so those type things will continue to raise rates. And because of that, it does open the door for us in the supplemental space. A lot of people still to this day ask, well, how can you do it cheaper than the major medical plans? Not that we're doing it cheaper, but we don't have those $1 million claims because our benefit structure stops at usually roughly about $10,000. So we don't have that end-stage renal disease or the kidney failure or the heart attacks and strokes. It only pings us for a certain amount. For those guys, major medical carriers, it continues to go. And so that's kind of one of the things I'm hearing and seeing in the market. I've also seen as well, I got on here, carriers and TPAs are exiting the market. And so what we've seen on that front is in our gap and supplemental space, I've seen 3 to 4 carriers right now either pull out of the market completely or non-renewing all their products before year end. So
and why is that, right?
Different ones, different things. To me, I think personally, a lot of people jumped into the space because they saw it as being an option. They came in there a little too low. Maybe their actuarial numbers were off. Maybe they just tried to buy some business. But the problem with that is you come in too low. A lot of times you don't have all the claims the first year. You need a little bit of runoff, so they maybe give them a rate hold when they really needed a rate increase because they didn't have all the data at that point because they're having to make decisions, maybe 120 to 90 days out before renewal. And then what you see is they end up taking a bigger hit on the second year because they didn't give that rate increase. So a lot of these carriers are 2-3 years in, and it's just they pull out. And so what that does is causes change. It's a good thing for us. It's a negative thing when they come in and they're offering the lower rate, right? That is really probably priced too low. But at the same time, it's for us, it's opened up a lot of doors, and we've seen our highest year ever by probably 30% right now. So it's been a good thing from us on that standpoint. That's some of the stuff I'm seeing. Ben, what about you?
Yeah, well, I think the unintended side effect of that is it can cause some hesitation with agents in providing new solutions to a group. Could even the group, hey, look, I'm going to tell you about this gap plan. Oh, P.S., a year later, the company is gone. And it's, okay, what do I do now, right? You end up with a little egg on your face in that situation. And I think we've also seen the importance of administrative services. So a lot of the carriers outsource that, and they use TPAs, a third-party administrator, Morgan White being one of them. That is your kind of bridge to your customer. And if you could be doing everything correct as an insurance carrier, you lose a TPA, you're still sunk. So you're losing the piece of the pie there, and then kind of all the dominoes start falling for you, and it puts you in a little bit of a bind. As far as partnerships, I know you asked specifically about gap products, but one of the things that I've seen a little bit more on the individual side is creating more partnerships with ICRA administrators. So companies that are providing individual coverage HRAs, and they're taking, in some situations, maybe a group plan that either was too cost prohibitive to continue, or maybe even offering insurance for the first time for a small business. They're using, I don't want to say new laws anymore, but arrangements that have been put in place for about 5 years now to provide dollars to their employees where they go choose their own insurance, and kind of really flipping the whole thought process that we've had in group insurance kind of upside down. And hey, rather than an HR person choosing insurance for your entire company, we're going to give you money. And the needs for insurance for a healthy 24-year-old, pointing myself like I'm 24, I'm not even close.
I like the optimism.
Or maybe a married 45-year-old with multiple kids, their insurance needs could be different, and the dollars that they want to spend on that could be different. And to Ryan's credit, what they're going to the doctor for, maybe a 24-year-old's looking more for a catastrophic coverage, but they may want something for mental wellness. Maybe they want to talk to if you got dollars to spend, you can kind of, almost like any other way we shop. Most situations we go shop for things. We research it, we find out what we want. Whereas employment has become synonymous with insurance because it's part of a benefit for working somewhere. And I know we have some other questions on that, which I want to get into, but as far as us being a provider of individually billed products, we found that there's more and more agents starting to talk about these ICHRA arrangements. And because of that, we're finding more partnerships that really wasn't something we were talking about a few years ago. So that's something I've been very interested in.
That's great. So going back to these significant players exiting or changing their strategy, as we look into 2026, what are some things that we can learn from their changes?
Man, watch out for private equity. I hate to say that. Don't over leverage. Yeah, that's a big one. We saw a great TPA, name will be unsaid, but great TPA, great leaders, had a very rough year when they sold to private equity a few years ago. Just in short, they weren't hitting the numbers that private equity wanted. Well, they ended up filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy, complete liquidation. And what they did was it put all the carriers that they were administering for in a bind. Because Chapter 7, your doors are shut, systems are locked, so all of a sudden that data can't get out there. They don't have it. All the members, all the groups, everything else, all the agents aren't getting paid commission, everything's locked. And sometimes those go rather quickly, 30 days to 45 days before it gets to a spot, but that doesn't happen overnight. And for 45 days to be in limbo, you're trying to go in to have a surgery, and the provider's trying to verify you have insurance coverage. Well, the phone's not working or no one's answering it. That's a problem. And so we saw some of that this year, and I think you just got to be careful with private equity, companies that are owned by private equity, because there's always a chance of that type of stuff happening. I also saw tenure in the market being a big thing. You look at people who've been in a space for 10, 20, 30 years, they got staying power, they've been there, they know it, they know how to weather the storms. A lot of these companies that come in fly by night, and they may be a big company, but to them, it's as a buddy of mine always says, redheaded stepchild, it's the little thing. So it's easy to say, let's just cut that off. Let's not do that anymore. When you got $100 billion in your company and this thing's only generating you $30 million in premium and maybe losing you money, it's easy to stop it. Well, that just creates problems and issues and everything along the way. So that was something, and it's still fresh on our mind because we're kind of handling some of the ripple effects that come from it. But I would say even for us looking at contracts, so we have 2 or 3 different deals going right now that we're working on trying to get across the finish line. It's made us from a compliance, legal, audit standpoint have to look way more closely at those to be able to make sure, hey, are we covered? Do we have a letter of credit there to protect us if something happened? If we're ceding all the risk to these guys, and they go poof or they disappear or whatever the case may be. So I do think that's something a lesson to learn to be able to look at. And Ben mentioned this at the very beginning, but the hacking of insurance companies right now. There are programmers out there right now specifically that are trying to hack insurance companies in the United States. And they're trying to get that data because they can sell that data. We had one of our partners recently had a data breach, and we found out about it past the time that they were supposed to let us know. We found out from another partner. And so there's a lot of compliance in this type of stuff as well that you have to follow and check the boxes and do things like you're supposed to. But I would say protecting data. A lot of times people send stuff in emails right now that they're sending unsecurely instead of encrypted. And no one likes to have to go in there and enter a password and remember the password and all that type of stuff. I get that 100%. But I would say that is, if you're an agency or you're a small company and you have one of these data type breaches, it can cost millions, and it can wipe your company out. So I would say on that's something as well that I would, something I've learned that this year, and unfortunately fortunately, It's been someone else's ditches, but unfortunately, we still have to deal with it. So it's kind of one of those. Those are some of the biggest ones I've learned this year.
Yeah. Well, if you guys had to sum up this year in one word or a few words, how would you sum up the insurance industry?
I'd say adaptive. Things continue to shift, and we have to shift with it. One of the things that I'm starting to hear a lot more about is artificial intelligence. And that's something actually on the property casualty side has been in use for much longer than what we're doing. And I'm starting to see, once again, we keep talking about these massive amounts of data. And what can artificial intelligence do for us with that is it can become, 10,000 people of ingesting that data and making something out of it, whether it be, for an agent using that information to help get their customer the best deal, whether it be a TPA potentially using AI to handle the simpler customer service issues, whether it be a carrier using it to take a look at claims information and decide what rates may be. So, I think it's funny with my car insurance, if I get in a wreck, I can take a picture of the damage and they will, AI is going to give me a quote. And I know it's going to be the lowest possible amount to get me to take the money instead of actually going to a body shop and figuring out what it should be. But that's all artificial intelligence. Now, the great thing, though, is I still think what we do is a high-touch industry. So I don't think AI will ever replace an agent. What I think it can do is make them better. It can take the remedial, the repetitive stuff off their plate and allow them to do more of the tasks that really they've got in this industry to do. They became an expert advisor on those things. So, I know that's long-winded, but I guess my word is adaptive for the industry, and I think we will continue to do that.
Yeah. I'd give it two words: busy and change, and kind of adaptability. Kind of a lot of stuff Ben said. That it's changing. It's ever changing. Whether you're dealing with self-funded type plans, it's the PBMs and trying to figure out that and the laws that change that go along with it that you have to be able to adapt to. Or whether it's in our industry, what we've seen this year is players getting out of the market, players having issues that end up bringing business and being able to handle and adapt to that. Or in the individual space, there's been a ton of changes on that front. And I mean, even too on that side of it as well, there's been a lot of big players that had some issues this year, and that business starts moving. And so it's something like that it's been a changing year. And I think it will continue with AI and the other things along those lines. I'm with you. I think AI is going to make us stronger, make us better, make us sharper. I told someone the other day, and this is a great hack for everyone listening in. I did not know that in AI or in chat, you can take a PDF and tell it to summarize it for you. So I had a meeting in Charleston, and I got a 350-page document sent to me on Friday afternoon, said, hey, here's for our meeting on Monday. It was like, come on, man, really? And so that Monday morning, I was in a meeting before we left, and I said, you can drop that in ChatGPT and ask it to give you a 3-page summary. I tell you, I dropped that thing in there so quick, and I got it back, gave me a 3-page summary, and I felt like I knew it just as good as everybody who had looked at it. And so there's a lot of things like that that it can do just to help your individual insurance agents that may not be dealing with the TPAs and the carrier systems and all that type stuff. But there's a lot of things that we'll do to make us easier to be able to understand stuff and be able to give us the information we need in a quicker standpoint.
It seems like any new technology like that, there's this pendulum swing, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like we use it too much or not enough, and then it kind of, over time, I feel like the last few months I've seen a lot of leaders sort of find that sweet spot of where does AI integrate into what they're already doing and make them better.
That's right.
Talking about young talent, how are you guys seeing developing young talent and just the importance for that?
I think it's critical. I think, I hate to say it, but I came into the industry when I was 22. Now I'm 42. And it feels like it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I know over the past 20 years, I have not spent the time that I needed to developing the next generation. And it's one of those things, it's the should list, right? But it doesn't take priority because it's not an immediate problem. But the problem is if you don't invest in those people today, tomorrow when you need them, they won't have what they need to be able to do what you need them to do. And so we've got some young talent on our team, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And we have tried to do a better job this year of taking them and getting them out in the field and meeting with different people. If I had to give an example of someone who I think is doing it great, it would be Crum and Forrester. This is a plug for them. They do a phenomenal job of hiring some younger guys. They bring them to the conferences. They let them sit in all the meetings, and they go to the different stuff, and they get them to help with a lot of the things that a lot of us might consider menial tasks, but that's how you learn it. It's all that type stuff. It's the stuff you don't want to do that makes you learn it better. Everyone wants the nice steak dinner and, to get the commissions that come in from, but there's a million other little things that kind of go into those type deals. And so that is one thing for next year we're going to be putting more of a focus on there, because as we've all been doing this in our department, we got so many people who've been doing it for 20 years now, and we're all getting a little bit older. And if we don't start, it will be a lull there, or we will have a problem to some degree. So
I think you hit the nail on the head too, Ryan, about getting out. I think there's certain, I guess, skill sets that have very much increased with the younger generation, where some that we might have expected are maybe not so much there. And I'll use, the tech savviness. You don't even have to question that. I mean, nobody's walking in the door and doesn't know how to use Excel or email. Whereas, 20 years, 30 years ago, if you've got an old timer sitting around, they may not do email. They may not do, I don't want to say names, but I know a few people.
I know who you're talking about. Sorry, I got to jump in there. So, not saying names, but the other day, hey, just send me hey, can you hop in this meeting? Yeah, send me the Zoom thing. They printed the Zoom thing, got someone to scan it into us, and then sent by email. Someone else sent by email the Zoom thing. It's like, am I supposed to enter that long address? I don't even know how to do that. So, sorry, go ahead.
And they're going to eat through the Amazon rainforest with printouts, too. Print out the whole internet.
That's right.
But the difference is those people can get out and sit at a table across from somebody and look them in the eye and have a conversation. And I think with the younger generation, look, I'll say since COVID, they went to school online. A lot of them do the vast majority of things online. They may have 20,000 friends on their social media, but how many people do they really talk to? So I think, really with the younger generation, we can almost put the tech savviness to the side. You don't have to, I don't really think that as much needs to be invested there, because they come in knowing it. But the other things, like doing a presentation in front of someone, or making a cold call. People are I know, if I could name how many emails or phone calls I get a day, someone wants to sell leads, the good old-fashioned cold call still exists. And that's something I think you can use technology to help you. Hey, look at all these people. Maybe I can have some AI to figure out all these people in a certain area that don't have what I'm selling, right? In any industry, you still got to go talk to them at some point.
Yeah. Or be better equipped for that call.
Yeah,
AI to
right.
That
So AI can get you to the front door, but you got to open it up and talk to somebody.
So I think that's just with the younger generation. That's something we'll have to continue to focus on, because people are just getting less and less people-y. For lack of a better word. They are.
That's fair. It's good to say. Well, guys, as we're kind of getting close to our end here, I had a few more questions for you. The individual and group markets are changing fast, but they require very different leadership styles. What lessons translate between the two?
I would say, talking about different leadership styles and the different, and I'll say this, and I'm not building one up or tearing one down, but I do think they're different agents typically. They're different approaches typically with the business. If you're going to meet with a group business, you typically are wanting to be more professional. You're wanting to be have everything laid out. You're looking at more cost analysis. You're looking at a lot of different things. In the individual space, a lot of times it's someone who's called you and you're trying to help them with something they need. Not all the time. There's a lot of people still out there grinding for it, but a lot of the times it's, hey, I need a dental plan, or hey, I need an individual, can you help me with this? And you're giving them a solution. They're taking whatever you're giving them most of the time. Well, employers, they're trying to figure out how to save dollars. They're trying to make sure that this plan will take care of everything that they're 50 employees will need, because if they don't, they're going to be getting 50 employees coming to their questions. So when it goes into leadership styles there, this is kind of off the cuff, but leadership styles, I think you're trying to develop a team from the group side that is more professional. You're trying to get someone who understands the cost analysis, who's thinking like an employer would think. We all think like consumers because we are consumers. Yes, but when you go to a group, you got to be able to know, hey, I'm thinking about a business owner here who's not only just taking care of their employees, but also looking at their own financial books. So it's a little bit different thought process. And I think you got to have leaders on those type sales teams who understand that going in, and they're teaching them. And I think on that, there's a buddy of mine who owns a great shop in Alabama. He hires a lot of young people, and he's got a lot of older people, and he pairs them up where the older guys and the younger guys are paired together. Kind of just it touches a little bit, but that way the younger guys can help the older guys with some of the stuff they may not be as good about, but the older guys can help the young guys kind of think from a business standpoint that they, 2 years out of college, you're not thinking about, any of that type of stuff. So it's one of those things, it's a good pair to be able to help go out. And I think realizing that from a leader standpoint is very intelligent, and making sure you're pairing them up and they go in pairs together and they're both learning and training together. So off the cuff, that's kind of what I would say to that one.
Yeah, kind of goes back to that mentorship.
It does. It's important. It's very important.
Well, guys, as we're moving into 2026, it's quickly approaching. What are your big predictions for the industry this year?
Man, it's hard. There's so many different segments of the insurance industry, right? Whether it's, the carrier side, the administrator side, the brokerage side, the agent side, property and casualty, life and health, they're all different. But I see it still being another record year. I think premiums will go up. I think you're going to see some premium dollars go up for everybody. I think you're going to see claims dollars that'll go up for everybody too. I mean, like Ben mentioned, the cyber insurance. I mean, we were reviewing our cyber insurance policy a few weeks ago. Well, it was getting a 15, 20% bump. But they're probably getting more than 15 to 20% claims increase overall, not with us, but with their whole block of business because of all the hacking that's going on. I think people are on the health insurance side are continuing to use their medical more, kind of like we went over earlier. So I see premium numbers going up. If I look at us as a company, 2025 will be our best year we've ever had. We've had 3 record years in a row, which is phenomenal. And I'm looking down the pipeline, and I don't see it stopping. I mean, it's really exciting. It's really good. I think people are getting more creative. I think you're having people try to get more into the insurance space and partner with people. A lot of partnerships going on right now. And I'll give an example of that because it might not make sense off the cuff, but there's I'll use this one, the Ritz-Carlton in Grand Caymans. Wonderful hotel, by the way. But they take some of their own risk on their building. But then they wanted to get reinsurance. Well, they went locally to be able to get reinsurance. Well, they got to have an A-rated carrier to be able to do that. So we had someone approach us about being the fronting carrier for the reinsurance. So we get a fee for being the fronting carrier, allows this guy who may not be as big to be able to take the reinsurance on that. But that got them into the market, and they weren't in the market previously. And we've seen probably 700 deals like that this year. Wow. And so I say that people are getting more creative on how to be able to take risks they want. And saw a big steel company the other day. I was talking with a guy, and he was saying that, hey, we've been taking risks on ourselves through a captive. We're looking to be able to try to do some stuff for some other people in the same industry that we feel like we can price this correctly and be able to help mitigate some costs and risks there. Could we work with you guys potentially on you fronting? We'll handle all the stuff. So I think people are trying to figure out there and get it because costs are continuing to go up. How can I take some of this and do it myself? And so that's some of the different things I think we're looking forward to in the coming years.
Yeah, I think the creativity thing, that was one of my thoughts too. And not even necessarily just on the carrier or TPA or provider side, but really the agents. I talked to a broker a couple weeks ago, and this guy was doing ICRA, reference-based pricing, self-funding for small groups, individual group. I'm just like, wow. I mean, this guy's he's a killer out there. Yeah. And I think that's a big shift from years ago when it's just, hey, we're going to do fully insured group insurance, and that's how it works. So, in order to combat the continuing rising costs, you talked about it on one side of the fence. The other side of the fence is you got agents out there just trying to find solutions. Yeah. And, I think the ones that are going to be creative are going to be the ones that win. And the guy that sits there just hanging on to, I got my commission and this is all good and we're going to play golf once a year, I mean, unfortunately, those guys are just going to lose ultimately.
Once a week, right?
Maybe once. If you're playing golf once a week, you got a big enough block. But no, I think that, and obviously, I know we keep going back to it, but AI, I think, is going to come into play, not just for the carriers and not just for the service providers, but the brokers as well. I mean, something as simple as a chat bot. I mean, those things are as cheap as a Netflix subscription now to get a virtual agent to work for your company and answer simple questions. So I think it's going to continue to go on the tech side. There's a lot of venture capital money going into insurtech, and a lot of these startups from out west, and what they're trying to do is build a big company with big revenue and sell it. And we've seen some of these big, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions on the Ben admin side and some of these big tech companies. So, if somebody catches lightning in a bottle, somebody's going to buy it from them eventually, right? And it's going to be for the good of everybody. But everybody's just looking for that little niche. What can I do with technology? And given that people are willing to fund my venture to figure that out, I think it's just going to keep making the industry adapt and get better.
Well, as we wrap up, we haven't talked a ton about leadership. We talked about mentorship, changes, adapting. But I would love to just end on a note of who inspired you guys this year.
And mine's probably a more recent one, but what comes to my mind initially is Charlie Kirk. Obviously unfortunate kind of how that all went down, but I think it opened up the nation's eyes to, the fact that there are people out there trying to communicate and trying to cross the aisle, willing to open up their heart and their mind to people that don't necessarily agree with them. And I thought it was great that this guy went out there and he tried to empower the youth who are not as interested in politics or even faith for that matter. I think he never hit his faith, which was something that I thought was extremely admirable. And that's just one. I look at how my family reacted to that, and whereas it was sad, I was very proud in seeing the amount of interest and care that he got in what he was doing. So.
I thought I was going to be your guy.
2026.
That's 2026. Okay, I'll take next year. The guy who inspired me was my dad. As y'all know, he passed away earlier this year, and I did not realize how much he was doing. I always knew he was busy. I knew he was taking care of things. But I handle all his emails now. The emails will still come in, so I'm still getting all those and all the projects. Tried to jump in there and take that, and there's several of us taking on a lot of that type stuff, and we're all, now at 120% capacity, just taking over what he had and stuff he was doing for my mom, and just what a phenomenal man he was. And he led all these Bible studies, and he was reading 5 books on each book of the Bible before he did his lesson. I just saw so many different things. It's like, where did he find the time to do this?
And he was writing books too.
And he was writing books as well.
Still looks so relaxed.
Yeah, and
see him around,
never got upset. It was he lived a model life, and it was but it inspired me. And it's funny sometimes that I always told him how much I appreciated him, but I wish I would have told him more when he was here, because I see now more of what he's doing. And but that inspires you. It pulls you to another level as well. So had a guy tell me, my pastor actually told me, he said Rick was like an oak tree. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Rick was like an oak tree. No one knew how much shade he was providing for other people. And he said, you don't realize it until the oak tree's gone. And it was like, man. He said, but with that, when the oak tree's gone, it does give other trees more chance to grow, so they can provide the shade. And so that's what you got to remember. So that was a big one for me. So
what a beautiful metaphor for you.
Yeah, no, it was a blessing. It was a blessing. So
guys, thank you so much for today and this year of episodes. We hope that it's added a ton of value for you guys as well, and we're excited about 2026. Thanks so much for watching today.